What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for UFC 289. We have the Women's Bantamweight Championship of the World on the line here as Amanda Nunes looks to take on Irene Aldana. Now, initially, we were supposed to be having the trilogy of Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes set to headline this fight card here. Juliana Pena did have to withdraw. I am much happier with this newly added matchup. You guys let me know what you guys think. I like the fresh matchup here of Irene Aldana stepping in. I think stylistically it makes for a much more exciting fight. Irene Aldana can crack on the feet, and we know that Amanda Nunes loves to showcase her striking, and I think that this is going to be a much more competitive fight than I think that the Pena fight would have been. I think the trilogy would have looked very similar to what the second match of Nunes and Pena looked like there. So I'm excited about that. Other than that, we got some other interesting fights. Of course, Beneil, Dariush, and Charles Oliveira. Unfortunately, we lost Wonderboy and Michel Pereira. That was a fight I was excited for. But I think this is a pretty decent card, especially when you take a look at the last two cards that the UFC just put on. So this is a step up. I'm excited for it. You guys know what we got going on here. We're going to be starting at the bottom of this card, working our way up towards the top. We're going to be analyzing all the matchups, how they match up stylistically, who we're favoring in these fights, what the betting lines are looking like, where we see the value. And I'll have timestamps here, of course, so you guys can scroll to any specific fight you guys want. Real quick, please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you guys have not already. Check me out on all my social media. It really helps me out, guys. I appreciate you there. I put a lot of time into this card here. Don't forget, we're hitting up recaps of every episode of The Ultimate Fighter, so you guys can expect to see a recap of episode 2 by Wednesday this upcoming week. And if you're wondering how I did for UFC Vegas 74, somewhat of a frustrating card there. We hit one of our two plays. We have pretty much a stalemate of a night. Initially, I did have a wager on Jared Gordon. He withdraws the last second, and I looked to add one more play. Of course, the play that I add last minute, should have stayed away from it. I threw a little play at Luan Lacerda there, and he did not look good there at all. I thought he would have had the edge down the mat. I like the matchup stylistically a little bit, enough to throw a little something at it there. But other than that, Zaleski dos Santos comes through for me, gets a close decision call there. He was a slight dog, rather than slight dog odds, minus 105, and lose a very minuscule 1 unit on the card, which you could take a little a chip away from the max play that we hit on the card previously. And now we look forward to UFC 289, where I am looking to hammer this card. I'm going to have significant units out on this card. I'm letting you guys know that right now. If you're looking to work with me, do not hesitate to reach out. I'm going to have a significant amount of units out on this card. There are some spots that I really like on this card.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
Kicking off the card, we have a strawweight matchup between Diana Belbita and Maria Oliveira. I guess you could say two lower level UFC fighters, and fighters that are questionable to be on the roster somewhat. I think more so in Diana Belbita's case. But both fighters only 26 years old, and both of these fighters kind of have that little bit of a it factor going on outside the cage, if you guys catch my drift, right? Maria Oliveira, she's got the body going on and all that. She uses that to her advantage, but she's also an entertaining fighter, right? When you watch her fights, she has that Diaz type style. She's raising her hands up in the air. She's bringing the fight, and the UFC loves that. Diana Belbita, definitely a looker, and a fighter that is only 1-3 in the UFC since being signed. She's had some very questionable performances, but both fighters are only 26 years old, so they also got that going for them. The UFC maybe giving them a little bit more time to develop, giving them a little bit more of a chance to start to solidify their career. But don't get it twisted. If Diana Belbita specifically goes out here and takes another L, she probably will be cut. You think back to her performance against Liana Jojua, where she was submitted very early on in that fight. Showed very low level fighter IQ in that fight. She went into the one strength that Jojua has, going into her guard, when Jojua is kind of a one-trick pony with her submission skills, a very low level fighter there. She showed to have learned from it going into her next fight and squeaking off a W against Hannah Goldie in an ugly fight. But she was on her back at times in that fight, and then bounced back with the loss against Gloria DePaula, which is a common opponent. Maria Oliveira has a victory over Gloria DePaula in her fight before her last and losses to Vanessa Demopoulos and Tabitha Ricci. Two recognizable names, more specifically Tabitha Ricci, a respectable opponent. Vanessa Demopoulos, these days, take that one with a grain of salt there. But I think that Maria Oliveira does show to have more promise right now. Currently, I think that she's a fighter that is more realistically to see her hanging on to her UFC roster spot, especially with her striking skills and her aggressiveness there. But I'm not completely sold on either fighter. So I'm not completely sold on Maria Oliveira here as well. I will be leaning towards her way, though. I think that she can get the better of the striking exchanges. I'm going to say that she can most likely avoid the submission threat from Belbita. Belbita's had a couple submission victories as of recently. Not many, though, throughout her 14 pro wins. Just 3 subs, but she's pulled some off recently. And, on the other hand, Maria Oliveira, 7 KOs, about half of her wins coming by way of KO. Maybe she could bloody Belbita up. And just kind of take over this fight with the striking there. I'm not saying it with an overwhelming amount of confidence, but I do like the pick of Maria Oliveira here, especially when we go take a look here and you see that the line is very close. We'll take a look right now. Maria Oliveira right now, she opened up at even odds over on DraftKings, and she is now currently a -125 favorite. So some slight movement coming her way. And that pretty much happened immediately. And it's kind of settled in now at -125. I'm not going to say I'm shocked that the line's that close, because Maria Oliveira hasn't really proven herself all the way yet to be able to go out there and even take out a low level opponent like Belbita. But I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that line creep up to the -145 range by the time the fight takes place. So I do believe there's more value even on her at a -125 line, and I am picking Maria Oliveira to win this fight. Belbita will try to make things ugly, but I just think that Oliveira will get the better in those ugly exchanges, whether it's on the feet, even down in the mat. She could probably avoid that ugliness there. Maybe she ends up on top. Belbita has shown to make some mistakes down there as well. So give me Maria Oliveira, the Brazilian, in the first fight of the card. We head over to the flyweight division. You guys know I love this division. We got a UFC newcomer here in Steve Erceg. He's taking on David Dvorak. That's a tough task for a first fight in the octagon. David Dvorak, I know he's just lost 2 fights in a row, but they were both against very high-level talent in the division, and he has shown that he is a well-rounded fighter. He's the number 10 ranked flyweight fighter, so that's a tough task for a newcomer. But I'll tell you what, this kid Steve Erceg, so he was initially supposed to be fighting on Dana White's Contender Series. I believe it was supposed to be against Clayton Carpenter, a very talented fighter as well. We'll get back to him here in a minute. That fight didn't come to fruition. Now he gets this opportunity. I think that Steven Erceg is a talented fighter, and even if he doesn't go out here and get the job done this upcoming Saturday, I do believe that he's a fighter that will be hanging around in the UFC. I believe he will be on the active roster, and I think he will string off some W's down the line. This kid is becoming a more well-rounded threat as of recently. A lot of submissions. You take a look at his 9 victories, 6 submissions. Also has 1 knockout victory. You could pull that fight up on YouTube. Hit his opponent with a nasty step-in hook. You see him putting in work on the mitts and the pads. I really do believe that his striking is coming around. He's a young fighter. He seems to be very calm and composed out there when he's fighting. Fighting down under, he's definitely been dabbling with some low-level opponents. But if you want to kind of get an idea of what he's about, a submission victory over Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross is a respectable opponent. He's fought in the UFC now. He's fought in Dana White's Contender Series. Things haven't necessarily been going his way, but he's a talented dude. That's a legit W there. He also went to a decision loss against Denis Bandar, who just made his UFC debut as of recently as well. But stringing off finishes throughout his pro career. But yeah, a lot of these guys I am not as high on, and they're definitely a step below a David Dvorak. Now, on the other hand, we got to talk about David, right? We mentioned that he's on a 2-fight losing skid, 30 years old, came into the UFC. There was a lot of momentum behind him. Came into the UFC, got a victory over the very talented and underrated Bruno Silva. I'm a big fan of Bruno Silva's. He hasn't been the most active, but he is a dangerous fighter. Had a decision victory over Bruno there. Defeated Jordan Espinosa and Juan Camilo Ronderos. Submitted him in the first round like he should have. Since then, losses to Matheus Nicolau and Manil Cape. All right, those are 2 top 5 flyweight fighters or whatnot. So, just understand that. And I think that David Dvorak right now is going to be as hungry as ever. I think there's no question about that coming off the losses. So I think that coming into this fight, he's going to be in phenomenal shape and just really have checked off every box going into this fight here. He knows he needs a W. I know he's very hungry. That makes it very difficult for a kid like Steven Erceg to come in here and get the job done. David Dvorak, real quick, we take a look at his losses. We only have 2 losses on record. They're not even dating his other losses here. They were so far back, but never submitted, right? Never submitted. So it's going to be tough for a kid like Erceg to go out there and pull off one of the variety of subs he's capable of. David Dvorak has shown to be able to avoid them up until this point. 2 decision losses. Can Steve Erceg go out there and get a decision victory? I think it's going to be tough for him. I got to lean David Dvorak here. I think most would agree, but I want to make it clear. I think this kid, Steve Erceg, is a talented dude, and I'm excited to see more from him in the future. Erceg will have a 3.5-inch height advantage, both men with the same reach there. And, let's go take a look at this betting line, because do note that Matt Schnell was supposed to be the initial opponent for David Dvorak. So in steps in on somewhat a short notice, Steve Erceg. You're not going to see a lot of books having this lineup at this point in time. But we do see right now, Bet Online has David Dvorak as a minus 500. If you guys can see that, he opened up as a minus 400 favorite, dipped to a minus 500. And it actually looks like it was just updated 15 minutes ago. So he's actually now a minus 360, that line dipping back down, which is interesting because that's exactly what I thought should be the case. I thought that minus 500 line was ridiculous. They need to put a little bit more respect on this kid Erceg's name. You saw the card, UFC Vegas 74 this past weekend. You saw some talented newcomers stepping in on short notice and knocking their opponents out. I mean, the game is crazy. So that line should be coming down. And you see now it actually was just updated, I believe. Yep, it was, as we refreshed it there. So now David Dvorak, a minus 360 favorite with the comeback on Erceg at plus 385. That might need to be adjusted as well here. Yep, and that just got adjusted live here on the page at now plus 295, which again, I expect that trend to continue. I wouldn't be surprised if we see David Dvorak close maybe around a minus 325 favorite. And so I think there's more value in the dog on Steve Erceg, especially if you jumped on that early. If you had a bet online account there and you grabbed that line. But a lot of other sports books didn't have that line available, and we'll see how that line closes. But more value on the dog. I think that David Dvorak goes out and gets a decision victory. I think he mixes things up, but avoids that submission. Land some good shots in the feet. They'll scrap it out there, but I think David Dvorak's speed will help him out for sure. And he's a tough dude. Maybe presses him up against the cage a little bit and just mixes things up and gets that decision victory. Does David Dvorak. Over to the featherweight division, we got Blake Bilder taking on the somewhat long-time UFC veteran at this point, and Kyle Nelson. Not always the most active, but he's been around for a little bit. And Blake Bilder, 32 years old, as is Kyle Nelson, even though Blake Bilder had just recently bursted on the scene, right? Had a big victory on Dana White's Contender Series. Also was the former Cage Fury champion, but defeated Alex Morgan on Dana White's Contender Series. Alex Morgan, a respected name in the game, the Canadian, I believe there, submitted him in that fight. And then Blake Bilder goes out and gets a victory in his UFC debut against a somewhat talented striker in Shane Young. That was an official play of mine, so shout out to Bilder for coming through for me there. In that fight, once again, we saw that Bilder really loves to use his footwork. I mean, he is just constantly on the move, circling the cage, and then exploding in with some heavy hooks. Definitely doesn't throw the most straight of shots. He throws his shots pretty loopy, but does put a little bit of pop on them. He's a well-rounded fighter, a scrappy dude, and he's a fighter that lacks no type of confidence. I mean, this is a fighter that really, in his mind, believes was gonna jump into the UFC and eventually push for the titles. That's the type of mindset we're talking about here. I don't know how true that will end up playing out, obviously, but still, you love the mindset there. Kyle Nelson, on the other hand, this is a dude that can crack. We know that. We've seen him starch dudes in the octagon. He's a fighter that really hasn't had a lot of success as of recently and should be coming off another loss if we want to be realistic here. He had that draw with Doo-Ho Choi, the Korean Superboy, in his return fight. There was a point deducted on the Korean Superboy there in the third round, I believe. And really, he was on his way to losing that fight. And then if you understand that he should have now lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his last 6 fights with just that one knockout victory against Marco Polo Reyes where he cracked him in the first round. But fighting good level of opponents, Jai Herbert, Billy Q, Matt Sales, I guess, Diego Ferreira. We know Diego's a talented dude. Kyle Nelson's going to have a pretty good size advantage here. He's going to be coming into this fight about 3 inches taller. He'll have about almost a 3-inch reach advantage. That all being said, I still got to go with Blake Bilder. Both men only 32 years old, man, but Blake just has, he doesn't have a lot of mileage on him, not a lot of pro fights, and I think that he's really starting to come to. Having that UFC debut victory in his back pocket, I think he's more confident than ever. I like his footwork here. I think that he can kind of frustrate the somewhat stiff Kyle Nelson, and I think that he could outland him if they mix things up, if it goes to the wrestling or whatnot. I'll even say that Blake gets the better of those situations too. Needs to work his way into the inside, can't be caught on the outside with Kyle Nelson landing some straight shots, and I think he'll be fine there. So let's go take a look at the live betting line. We will take a look at, let's take a look at DraftKings here, where you will see that Bilder is right now a minus 215 favorite, opened as a minus 200 favorite, dipped to a minus 195 line and went right back to a minus 215 line. So people starting to like this kid here. We got some action coming in on him. At over 2-to-1 odds, I'm not sure if I'm crazy about that line personally. I still want to see a little bit more from Bilder, and I would like to see him mix it up on the feet a little bit better. I would like to see him throw his shots a little bit more straight. Maybe if he wants to throw those step-in loopy shots, he could do that as well, but also maybe at times work the jab a little bit more so. I don't want him headhunting too much, and just, maybe if he's not hitting his target, maybe Kyle Nelson can outland him there. Nelson is a decent striker, but overall, I do like Bilder. Not crazy about the line there, if I'm being honest, but I think Bilder gets the job done. We'll drop a weight class down to the bantamweight division, where we got Aiemann Zahabi, of course, the brother of Firas Zahabi, one of the better coaches that we've seen throughout the years, taking on Aoriqileng Iori, the Chinese fighter here, who is now 29 years old, still has some room to grow. People have been pretty high on him as of recently. They seem to forget that this guy has taken a good amount of losses throughout his career. 24-9 now as a pro. Aiemann Zahabi, even though he's 35 years old, hasn't been near as active throughout the years with only 11 pro fights. That Zahabi, his brother, and the crew over there, they're very cerebral. They have a very intelligent way of going about the game. And I think that Aiemann Zahabi, even though he's 35 years old, I think mentally he is still very fresh and hasn't taken much damage throughout the years. We take a look at Iori real quick. Iori coming off 2 victories, but I am not high at all on the level of competition. I don't even believe that those are UFC caliber fighters, even though it took place in the octagon. Jay Perrin and Cameron Else. He finished Cameron Else in that fight there. Before that, losses to Cody Durden and Jeffrey Molina. Cody Durden kind of took that fight over as it went, landed a lot of shots with his boxing. I think that Zahabi has a very realistic possibility to do something similar here. Again, we could scroll all the way throughout his career. I mean, a lot of losses early on throughout his career there, and not that long ago. I mean, 4 years ago, he was still a younger fighter, but still. So you got that going on here. Real quick, stylistically, Iori will have about a 1-inch reach advantage, and he'll be almost about an inch and a half taller. Seems to be a little bit of the more naturally large fighter there. Iori, a very aggressive fighter. I wouldn't be surprised to see Iori try to mix things up and maybe try to sneak in some takedowns. He has shown throughout his UFC career that he likes to change levels a little more so. But you know what? Zahabi so far has shown to have a 75% takedown defensive rate. I think that he has the potential to keep this fight standing, where it still will play out very closely. But I think that the jab of Zahabi will land, and I think his shots will just land a little bit cleaner overall. And maybe this fight plays out similarly to what we saw in the Iori versus Durden fight. This is a fight that I really have capped close. I think that this fight, this is a tough one. But you know what? I got to go with the very cerebral Zahabi. I'm sure he's very prepared going into this fight. And Iori at times has seemed to be a little bit reckless, you could say, just not the most prepared at times. Although he is a good athlete and he's very quick and all that, but I'll still side with Zahabi. And let's go take a look at the betting line on this fight here. You're going to see that Zahabi is the slight underdog. We'll stick over on DraftKings, where Zahabi right now is a plus 110 underdog. We've seen him dip as much as to be a plus 120 dog. So as of recently, it came back down to a plus 110 line, went to a plus 115, back to a 110. Don't expect to see that line going, moving around too much. It probably should stick around what it's at. I could definitely see Iori being the favorite coming into this fight, but I'll say there's more value on Zahabi. This isn't a fight that I'm necessarily crazy about targeting personally. I think that this is somewhat of a coin flip. So in that case, give me the dog value there. over in the women's flyweight division. A very intriguing matchup. Two fighters that do show to have some promise here at a little bit at different stages of the game, in the sense that Jasmine's 34 years old, even though she only has 10 pro fights, or Miranda Maverick still has a world ahead of her to go. She's only 25 years old and already has 15 pro fights, but she just has so much time to develop in the game, and she's already shown so much promise. So I've been very high on Miranda Maverick. She's had her hiccups here and there, but you have to understand that she's going to iron those things out, and she's just a very promising fighter. I believe that Jasmine, Jasudavicius, just to talk about her a bit, I think that she's an overachiever. She got into the game late. We saw her on Dana White's Contender Series. She had a really a grueling match where she had the victory over Julia Palastri. Got the job done there. And this is a fighter that doesn't really have a grappling background, but just seems to be a natural grappler. This girl gets on top of her opponents, and she bullies them, a lot of them, right? Her striking, it's coming around as well. She has some decent striking. And I think for a girl that got into the game pretty late, I think that she has some real natural ability. Looked great against Kay Hansen, spoiled Kay Hansen there. Her lone loss in the UFC is against Natalia Silva, who's one of the most promising fighters on the up and up right now. After that loss, bounced back with a victory over Gabriela Fernandez. And now, to talk about Miranda Maverick real quick, we talked about some of the ups and downs she's had. Just took out Shayna Young for the second time in her pro career. Submitted Sabina Mazo. Lost to Erin Blanchfield, but we didn't understand at the time who Erin Blanchfield was. Erin Blanchfield, obviously, she's the girl, right? So that loss was what it was, and that was a great learning experience for her. Before that, she had a loss to Macy Barber. The vast majority of us felt that Macy Barber did not do enough to get the job done there, so that probably should have been a W. And those are the two blemishes right now, as of recently. And you have to understand that she's growing. She's looking better than ever. She mixes things up. She's very physically strong, is Miranda Maverick. I mean, this girl carries some serial muscle mass. That's a good cereal, right? We'll start selling that. Some serious muscle mass. I think she has a great personality. You see her on IG all the time. She's on IG Live. She's doing the OnlyFans and all that. I don't think that she's really doing it in like a scandalous way. I think it's a little bit more clean cut, but if she's able to get some money from some of you bums out there, then good for her. I believe she's married and whatnot, but she's just a professional chick, and I'm really excited to see how far she could push it. Like I said, she's only 25 years old, and I think that she's going to go out here and get the job done. But I want to let you guys know something real quick. Jasmine is going to have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. She's the much taller fighter, which isn't necessarily something new against Miranda Maverick. But I think that Jasmine's an underrated fighter. She's an under the radar type of fighter. And this betting line's off. That's what I'm going to say here. Even though I'm on Miranda Maverick, I think she's just a little bit better everywhere this fight goes, and I think she'll get the better of the grappling exchanges most likely. And on the feet, I think that she'll use her footwork. She'll get on the inside. She'll land some nice power kicks and all that. But let's take a look at this betting line real quick, where you will see that Miranda Maverick right now, it's a high line. We take a look over at BetUS. She opened as a minus 280 over there, minus 280 favorite, and money's still been coming in on her. She's now a minus 320 favorite. I'm not sure if I'm crazy about that line there. When you have a very capable opponent in Jasmine Jasudavicius, she can easily make this fight play out very closely. She's a grinder as well. She can stuff takedowns and all that. So, if Miranda might not just have easy success getting on top of her, this is a fight that could really go, tit for tat there. So not necessarily crazy about all that. And let's just check some numbers real quick. Landed per minute, Miranda Maverick landing almost 1 strike per minute more so, absorbing less as well. Jasmine, she's willing to trade on the feet, that's for sure. Absorbing 3.85 strikes per minute. That's a little bit on the higher side. She is willing to trade. So Miranda Maverick will have some opportunities to land some heavy shots there too. I could see Miranda maybe bloodying her up a little bit. This should be a fun fight here. I gotta lean Miranda Maverick. Not crazy about that line personally. You won't see me mixing that in a parlay. But I do have Miranda Maverick getting the job done, and opened as over on DraftKings, opened as a minus 265 and now is a minus 300. So money consistently coming her way. It'll be interesting to see how far that goes, but I think it'll settle. I think people will start to realize that Jasmine is legit as they see her hit the scales and they see these women stare each other down and see the size that Jasmine has and the tenacity. But give me Miranda Maverick to win a decision And hopefully for Miranda's sake, you don't see any of this, some Anthony Pettis action going on. Maybe we see Jasmine jump off the side of the cage and hit Miranda with a flying kick there. Watch out for that. And real quick, before we jump into this top 15 middleweight matchup between Nassourdine, Imavov, and Chris Curtis, we were supposed to be having a matchup of Chris Daukaus making his light heavyweight debut against the very dangerous Khalil Roundtree Jr. in the light heavyweight division there. So that fight was scrapped. Chris Daukaus pulls out. That's a tough go over there for Chris Daukaus. He's been struggling as of recently. That was a big fight for him, but we're not going to be talking about that, obviously. So now we're talking Imavov versus Curtis. Very intriguing matchup. Two polished strikers. Now, Chris Curtis, we'll talk about Chris here real quick. Chris is coming off a difficult loss, took a loss to Kelvin Gastelum, really had a lot of momentum coming into that fight, just had knocked out Joaquin Buckley, lost to Hermanson before that, but had a victory over Rodolfo Vieira, Brendan Allen, Phil Hawes, before that. That was dating to his UFC debut, so he's really made a name for himself. For those of you guys that know how I feel about him, I think that this is a fighter that is very much underrated and under the radar. And has been throughout the years. I mean, this has been a guy that was a UFC caliber fighter for a long time, and finally just got the opportunity a couple years ago. Didn't get the opportunity after getting a W on Dana White's Contender Series. And we all know Curtis and Sean Strickland are best boys. We all love that bromance. We know that those guys are always putting in some serious work together. They throw down in the gym, and you see it translate right into their fighting style in the octagon. Now remember, Sean Strickland just went out there on short notice and defeated Imavov. Imavov had a lot of momentum going into that fight, and Sean Strickland really derailed a lot of that hype. So I love the background story going into this matchup here. You know that Imavov is very hungry for redemption here. You know that Curtis knows what to look for in order to get the job done. I mean, he just saw how that fight played out against one of his training partners. In fact, his number one training partner there. So I do expect that Curtis will be very, up for the task here. Chris Curtis coming off a tough loss though, right? Chris Curtis also just tasted defeat in a fight against Kelvin Gastelum, in a fight where things really just didn't go his way. I mean, he got hit with that headbutt that dropped him. That could have cost him the fight if you want to be serious about it. It didn't look good for the judges' scorecards, but he was actually outlanding him in that round, and it was a very close fight. Even though Gastelum looked great in that fight, I don't want to take anything away from him, but that headbutt was unfortunate. Before that, Curtis knocks out Buckley, had the loss against Jack Hermanson, then victories over Rodolfo Vieira, Brendan Allen, and Phil Hawes, dating to his UFC debut, I believe it was there, and even putting in work over at XMMA, and victories over all kinds of guys, even throughout the years. I mean, this is a guy that's been around the block for so long, 40 pro fights. And check this out. So even though Curtis is at a 5-inch height disadvantage, Chris Curtis is actually going to have about a 1/2-inch reach advantage. So I found that interesting. I'll say this much. I haven't been crazy about this combination that Curtis has been really continuously throwing out there. I mean, he loves to work the body and then swing it to this like step-in hook. He really falls in love with that, because if he lands that shot, it has been flatlining some guys as of recently. We see it. But as of recently, he hasn't been having as much success for that. I shouldn't say as of recently, right? Because he just had another knockout too. In some of his recent fights, there's been moments where he's been falling in love with that same combination. It's been missing a little bit. He struggled there in the Gastelum fight and was missing some of those shots. And I worry a little bit that he goes for that combination and he just gets aggressive. And in the meantime, Imavov can pepper him up a little bit with his footwork. You do note that Curtis has actually been taking a lot of damage, realistically, throughout his UFC career, and really throughout his entire mixed martial arts career. He's been absorbing 6.22 strikes since he's been fighting inside the octagon. I think that Imavov will have plenty of opportunities to land on him. But that being said, Curtis will be looking to return some heavy shots. Curtis loves to work the body as well. I love Curtis's boxing. Let me not be too harsh on him here. I mean, he's a very polished striker. I don't know, though. Something's making me lean Imavov here. You guys know I did lean Imavov against Strickland as well, as did many. But I'm going to give Imavov another shot here. I just feel that defensively he'll be a little bit sharper. He shells up a little bit better. And I think that he can kind of outpoint Curtis. I'm thinking maybe this fight goes to a decision and a little bit of a slugfest. I could see these guys trading, but I could also see this going to a decision, and whoever just lands the more clean shots and just, lands more volume, gets the job done. I am going to lean Imavov. All right. So I expect this fight to take place in the feet. And I think Imavov's very technical striking skill set comes into play here. But again, I know I'm ranting here. I know Curtis is very technical as well. I love this matchup. I will be taking Imavov to get the job done. Let's go take a look at DraftKings. And we'll see that Imavov is a minus 145 favorite, opened up as a minus 115, essentially a pick'em, and then the action's been coming in on him. And I think that's partly due to, if you break down the tape on Curtis, as of recently, even though he's been having some success, he knocked out Buckley as of recently. He ate some shots against Vieira as well, the jiu-jitsu guy. Curtis is there to be hit, like we said, and I think Imavov will land some clean shots here. I'll edge him in a decision victory. Hey, you guys, real quick, if you're looking to work with me with my official plays for this event, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Shoot me a message, whether it's email, Twitter, Instagram. It's all scrolling below. This is an event that I am loving. I see some great spots to make money, and we have major units out for this event. Shoot me a message, man. Let's make some money together. We got a matchup of two very tough middleweight competitors here. Eryk, your boy Anders, taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. Listen, I'm going to take advantage of having this platform here for a second because I can't find a solution online for this, and it's been driving me nuts. I'm hoping one of you guys knows how to fix this or what's going on. When I'm watching these little YouTube videos, not the regular YouTube video on my computer, but those YouTube Reels or certain Instagram Reels on my computer, why is it that it does this to me here? Why do I get this static here? I get this on these types of videos all the time, on my YouTube as well. When I'm on my computer, if I'm watching YouTube Reel videos, not the regular videos, those little quick ones that are like more vertically, and they get all static like this, I can't find anything online. So if anybody's out there that knows why this is happening to me, or if you have the same problem, please comment below and let me know. Back to this matchup here. You guys know I had the pleasure to chat it up with Eryk Anders a while back, and he's a great dude. He's a cool dude. He's really an absolute gladiator. If you really break down his fighting style, this is a guy that brings the fight. He looks to close the distance and land some heavy shots on the feet. But he's been being more, he's been becoming a more and more polished version of himself throughout the years. Even though he's getting up there in age, now at 36, I still believe that he's peaking as a fighter. The performance that he just put on was stellar against Kyle Dawkins there. Got the knockout in the second round. It was pretty cool. Right after that knockout happened, as Anders made his way back to the back, changed up and whatnot, he came back out to the arena and just so happened to be sitting a row down and a couple of seats over. So I was able to kind of just say what's up to him real quick, he was a cool dude. He was just chilling, enjoying the fights. So that was a cool experience. And he definitely comes into this fight with some momentum, as does his opponent, Marc-Andre Barriault, who's been putting in some work. Just had a knockout victory over Julia Marquez, although we need to note that Julia Marquez's defense has been very suspect. Before that, he was submitted by Anthony Hernandez, who has shown to be a threat to many in the division. Before that, he submitted Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright, not a UFC caliber opponent. And then before that, he was knocked out against Chidi Njokuani. So some ups and downs as of recently. Really, the big victory on his resume is the knockout over Julia Marquez. I'm not that high in the victory over Dalcha Lingambula. Not crazy about the Abu Azaitar victory. That's an okay one there too. But there's been some ups and downs throughout his career, and I think that he has potential. Does Marc-Andre? This is a guy that's putting a lot of work over at Team Killcliff FC. He's traveled the world in order to get the best training he could. Comes in phenomenal shape. He's going to be fighting in his own country. When he came into the UFC, he was, I believe, a two-time champion, two-weight class champion up in Canada. He really is one of the better Canadian fighters in the game. He's going to have the crowd behind him here, as this card is taking place in Vancouver. And I've been a little bit torn on who I'm going to go with here, but I'll be very clear to you guys, being cool with Anders and all that does not have any type of interference with who I'm picking here. I am picking Eryk Anders simply because his herky-jerky type of striking style that he has, the power he possesses. When you take a look at how he's been looking going into his fights, he really has been looking to be in phenomenal shape. I think he's taken the game very seriously, and I think that he's going to give Mark some problems on the feet. I think he can land some big shots and hurt him there. Good takedown defense does Anders has. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's in love with the fight game. He loves it. He lives and breathes this stuff. And I think that he's going to get the job done. I'm leaning Eryk Anders here. I could see him cracking Mark and hurting him bad. Maybe he wins a decision. Maybe he gets a knockout victory. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a knockout victory for Anders. I'll go with the knockout there. Maybe in the second round, something like that, as they really start to mix it up. And, let's see what people are thinking about. What are the masses thinking about this fight? When we take a look at the betting odds, Eryk Anders opens on Bet US as a plus 110 underdog, was a plus 105 for a brief period in time, and now has settled in as a plus 120. Are people liking that hometown edge for Marc-Andre there? Maybe, I don't know. But I will feel comfortable picking Eryk Anders, the dog, here at that plus 120 line. You can get him as high as a plus 125 underdog right now on DraftKings. So I think there's more value on that line. That should be a very fun fight. And I think they're going to be trading. I think we see some big shots landed in that fight. We got the number 13th ranked featherweight Dan Ige coming off a big-time knockout victory over Damon Jackson. He'll be taking on Nate Landwehr, who has won 3 in a row. I believe he's won at least 4 of his last 5 in the octagon as well, dating back to that victory over Darren Elkins. That is correct. Did lose his UFC debut against Herbert Burns, where he was finished there in the first round. They were trading, got hit with some big shots against the cage. But since then, he's been looking pretty good. That lone loss also in the first round after that against Julian Erosa. So showing to be vulnerable in the first round at times. Nate Landwehr, this is a guy that's decently well-rounded. I would say that his grappling and his wrestling is some of the stronger skill sets that he possesses. If I'm being honest, I had an official play on Nate against Darren Elkins. And if you guys remember that fight, it was an absolute bloodbath. Even though he outlanded Darren there and he eventually got the nod, I wasn't really crazy about the striking skills that he possessed in that fight, because I thought a lot of other talented guys in the division would have been able to put Darren Elkins out on the feet. Yes, Darren Elkins is an extremely tough grappler, great cardio and all that, and Nate matched up with him well there, so he was able to keep that fight standing. But once he was able to keep it there, I thought he should have been able to finish the job there. So I'm not really overly impressed with the striking he possesses. I like Dan Ige striking a little bit better. He mixes things up. He throws some nasty kicks as well. His boxing is very unorthodox. He catches guys off guard. And we just talked about the big knockout that he just had against Damon Jackson. Now, he's lost a couple fights before that, right? He was on a 3-fight losing skid before that. But look at the level of opponents, okay? Movsar, Evlovoyov, Josh Emmett, and the Korean Zombie there. Before that, he knocked out Gavin Tucker. And then he had a loss against Calvin Kattar. I mean, these are high-level opponents. Before that, victories over Edson Barbosa, Mirsad Bektik, Kevin Aguilar, Danny Henry, Jordan Griffin, Mike Santiago, dating back to his UFC debut, which, how funny was that fight? I gotta bring up that fight against Julio Arce, when those guys are just absolute doppelgangers. They look exactly alike. That was a very interesting fight. But Dan Ige, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, okay? This is a guy that knows how to work on the ground. And I don't believe that Nate's going to really be able to exploit him with his wrestling there. And I think that this fight will play out on the feet quite a bit. And I'm going to favor Dynamite Dan Ige to land some big shots here and to get the better of Nate Landwehr here on the feet. So, yeah, I am siding with Dan Ige in this spot. I know there's a lot of big Nate Landwehr fans out there. He has a funny personality and all that. It's great to see him hop on the mic. But I think that Dan Ige will have some opportunities to have some success here. Now, Nate Landwehr has been landing 6.47 strikes per minute in the octagon. Those numbers are very skewed due to the Darren Elkins fight, where the output was crazy in that fight. He's also been absorbing a lot of shots, 5.51 strikes landed, and the numbers are skewed from that fight as well. But I do believe that Dan Ige will have opportunities to land some big shots. I'm excited for this matchup here. I think this is a great fight. Nate Landwehr will be a little bit of the naturally larger guy here with the 2-inch height advantage, a 1-inch reach advantage. He's a big dude. He's strong. He can wrestle. Maybe he can kind of wear an Ige. Maybe he can try to pull out a decision victory. But I feel more comfortable taking Dan Ige in this spot here. Dan Ige, a little surprised to see where the betting line is. We take a look at the live line here on Bet US, where Dan Ige opened as a minus 240 favorite, went up to a minus 210, and now he is a minus 260 favorite. So a lot of action coming in on Dan Ige as of recently. This last updated 30 minutes ago as I'm recording this Sunday afternoon, about 6 days out from the fight. So it'll be interesting to see how the line moves. But Dan Ige is a pretty hefty favorite here. So people really respecting that knockout victory that he just had and understanding that he's a very talented fighter. Even though he had the ups and downs as of recently, understanding he was fighting top level competition. And also take note, Dan Ige, just 31 years old, cruising into the prime of his career. He stayed patient. He learned from those losses, and he's a very dangerous man. I like him in this spot here. I think Dan Ige gets the job done. The betting line, a little bit high. Maybe more value on the Nate Landwehr line. I'm not really crazy about where that line is. I could see this fight being a little bit of a barn burner, but Dan Ige will be a step ahead. In the welterweight division, we got Mikey Malott taking on Adam. Forget about it. Adam Fugitt coming off a huge victory for his career, a much-needed victory. And now when you take a look at where he's at, people are really starting to respect him. Look at the spot that he has right here. He's fighting on the main card on a big pay-per-view event like this. Coming off that victory against Yasuko Kinoshita, the very promising Japanese fighter, went out there and knocked him out in the first round. Before that, he was knocked out in the third round by Michael Morales, the Venezuelan, I believe, who was one of the Ecuadorian, who was one of the top up-and-coming young fighters in the game right now. You guys know that he is a dangerous man, a very well-rounded fighter there. So no shame in that loss. Before that, he knocks out Solomon Renfro. Solomon, a very respected fighter outside the UFC, went out there and knocked him out. He was a big underdog going into that fight. So he has some big victories. He has a knack for going out there and pulling off the upset. You take a look at his losses, they're all respectable. The loss against Kalen Hill, the loss against Austin Vanderford. I mean, these are no names here. Adam is a scrappy dude. And he's going to be coming into this fight with a huge reach advantage, almost a 5-inch reach advantage, which is nothing new for him. I mean, he's a very rangy dude. He's a scrappy dude, has that tricky southpaw type style on the feet, and he will have opportunities to land here. I've been very pleased with what I've seen from Mikey Malott. Just saw him fight live recently where he had that big knockout victory over it wasn't his last fight. It was actually 2 fights ago, but against Mickey Gall. Saw him knock out Mickey Gall. Then he just went out there, submitted Johan Linnes. Had the big victory on Dana White's Contender Series as well, where he submitted Shimon Smatrotsky very early on. Also has a submission victory over Solomon Renfro. I mean, it's been looking pretty nice for Mikey Malott. The one blemish that he has really is when he was knocked out against Hakeem Dawodu. That fight taking place over in the World Series of Fighting back then on I believe a Jake Shields undercard. All right, so he has been knocked out. We understand this is the fight game and anything can happen, and we know that Adam Fugitt carries some serious power as well. There is a realistic possibility that Adam can go out here and shake things up. I really do believe that. That being said, I like what I've seen from Fugitt, but I have to side with Mikey Malott right now. He's just a very technical striker. And again, I like the unorthodox style of Fugitt, and I think it can give a lot of guys problems. But Mikey Malott, I believe the striking coach for Team Alpha Male, this is a fighter that has also shown to be well-rounded and to have some promising grappling skills as well. I mean, he really checks off a lot of boxes. I think that he's just a very cerebral fighter, can do a little bit of it all. And I think that you have to pick him. I think you have to pick him in this spot. You understand that this is the fight game and things could shake up, but Malott is the way to go as far as who do you see winning this fight. He has a lot of things going for him right now, and as of recently, he's just been passing with flying colors in the cage, just doing so many things right. Very sound defensively as well. That's something that I've liked from him. Adam Fugitt absorbing 5.9 strikes per minute. He is there to be hit. On the other hand, like I said, Malott a little bit more technically, defensively sound. So this is a fun fight. I like Mikey Malott. I think that he lands the cleaner shots. We might see a knockout victory here for Mike Malott. I think that Adam brings the fight, and I think that there's a very realistic possibility Malott will land that pinpoint accuracy type of shot and get the job done. Well, in the meantime, it's also live that Adam gets a knockout shot. I think this is going to be a fight that they really trade and the crowd goes crazy, and we see like an under type of fight going on here, some type of finish. That would be cool to see. I think this is that's a very realistic possibility. Let's go take a look at DraftKings. Mikey Malott opened as a -200 favorite there. Was a -215 for a brief period in time, bounced back a little bit and forth, and is settling in right now -210. So the movement's been a little hectic, but nothing crazy going on there. And I could see him settling right around a -220 favorite for this fight. It'll stay relatively close to that. Fighting in his hometown, he is a fighter that has the potential to really hold the flag of Canada up high. You know, he's a fighter that really, he's one of the more promising fighters fighting out of Canada right now. So I think that the UFC would really like to get behind him here, but just understand that Adam Fugitt is not a slouch, and he will go out there and has the possibility to spoil the party for you. You know, if that line's right around minus 220, 230, am I crazy about it? It's another line, man, that's decently high. You got to be careful. You attack all these high lines on the card like this, and you have to see how it plays out, but it could be a little bit dangerous. You got some dangerous underdogs looking to scrap it up. Maybe more value on that dog line. So this very realistically is the people's main event, right? I mean, this is the fight that I think we're all most looking forward to. Charles Oliveira, the former lightweight kingpin, who was just recently dethroned, taking on Beneil Dariush, one of the most underrated fighters that we've ever seen in the fight game. And, you know, I can dive a little bit into that here in a second, why I think he's so underrated. But I think now there's just no denying his skill set. I mean, this guy is coming off a huge win, and the winning streak that he's on is just ridiculous. And he's a dangerous dude that checks off a lot of boxes. You know, Charles Oliveira, in my opinion, the greatest submission practitioner in the sport of MMA of all time. I mean, he holds the records for the most amount of subs in the octagon. It's not just because of those numbers, though. When you see how dangerous he is as you watch him, you know, live, when you're watching his fights live, I mean, this is a guy that's so skilled. He's so diverse with his submission attacks, and his grappling is just, I don't know, it's up there with the best of them. His striking has really looked sharp over the past couple years. I mean, he goes in there and he looks to take your head off. But I still do believe he's a vulnerable fighter. In some aspects when he's fighting some of the top guys, especially defensively. He's there to be hit at times, and we've seen him hurt. I mean, in his last fight, he got dropped by Islam Makhachev on the feet before he was eventually finished. We remember back in the day that he crumpled up a couple times. He got crumbled up, and I mean, he has worked on that, but I do question his durability a little bit. And, you know, I question his durability. I know as of recently, he's taken damage and is pushed through it and has gotten victories, right? He took damage against Gaethje, Poirier, Chandler, right? He took damage early on in all those fights, and just, it was like nothing, right? He just kept coming forward. I mean, you remember how Chandler hurt him really bad at the end of that one round. He came back and he finished him, I believe, going into the second. But still, you have to understand that when a fighter is getting dropped like that and they're getting hurt like that, that's not necessarily a good thing, right? And there's going to be guys that are going to go out there and they're going to finish the job. We saw that with Islam, and I think there's a very realistic possibility a guy like Dariush can hurt him and follow him down to the mat, and is very skilled defensively down on the mat and could avoid that sub and eventually just break a guy like Charles Oliveira. Kind of show my cards here, which way I'm going, man, because I'm very high on Beneil Dariush. He has... I'll talk about that in a second, but he is a fighter that is very well-rounded, and he's a fighter that has a little bit of an it factor, right? This is a guy that, like I said, he's so underrated for the fact that he doesn't come in looking so chiseled. I mean, it's not like he's just this ripped, jacked up guy. He comes in good shape, you know, but kind of has the stature of like a Greek statue, a Roman statue back in the day, right? They're not so jacked up, but like one of those gods that they're, you know, they're just kind of toned up, but they're not, you know, they're not looking chiseled like some of these guys that we see in the octagon these days, man. But this is a guy that's just a natural. I think he's just an absolute natural. I think he sees things coming very differently than a lot of other fighters. He sees things playing out in the cage. And, you know, real quick, let's just run the resume of a Beneil Dariush real quick so you guys understand what we're talking about here. You know, we'll date back to the one blemish that he had, but... you know, he got knocked out. Well, he's had a couple throughout the years, but look at this. He's on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 fight winning streak. He had the mishap against Alexander Hernandez. I do believe that he underestimated Alexander Hernandez taking that fight on short notice, and he paid for it. You know, he had a knockout loss against Edson Barbosa. I mean, a primed Edson Barbosa. He was so dangerous back then. But then even before that, victories over Rashid Magomedov, James Vick, was submitted against Michael Chiesa back in the day. Victories over Michael Johnson, the Hall of Famer Jim Miller, Darren Cruikshank, Diego Ferreira, Tony Martin. Then he was knocked out against Ramsey Nijam. That was way back in the day as well. But he's looked so good as of recently. We talked about that 8-fight winning streak. And, you know, I just believe that he stylistically is going to give Charles Oliveira some issues here. And Charles Oliveira, you guys know I was riding riding on him for so long, man, and I made a lot of money. He kept coming in as an underdog. I rode him as a dog in all these fights, from Kevin Lee, took him big against Ferguson, took him against Chandler, DP, took him against Gaethje. You guys know he was my cash cow, and you guys know I turned my back on him against Islam, and that was a big official play for me, and I cashed in on him, going against him there, and I'll let you guys know right now. I'm not picking him here again, man. I've turned my back on Charles Oliveira. I love him. I love watching him fight. But my gut tells me that, the natural Beneil Dariush is going to prevail in this spot. I think he avoids the submission. I think things get ugly. I think that Beneil Dariush fights a very cerebral type of fight, avoids those early grappling exchanges where they're dry. I think he lets things play out slowly where he eventually will break Charles Oliveira. The performance that he just put on against Mateusz Gamrot was so impressive. Beneil Dariush is very quick with his striking. He's very, very quick. It's very underrated, his striking, because he's very lackadaisical. Beneil Dariush isn't like Charles Oliveira. He's not as technical with the high guard, just chopping the leg kicks and with that typical Muay Thai type of striking. Beneil Dariush is a guy that can drop his hands low at times. He's lightning quick, though, and he sees things coming. And he's just a natural. He has that it factor. And I think he's going to land some big shots on Charles Oliveira. And I'm not sure how Charles Oliveira is going to hold up. I think it could look very similar to what we saw against Islam Makhachev. And I think that Beneil Dariush is going to push his way towards that title shot after getting the W here. Now, I know I sound very confident as I'm saying that right now because I'm kind of just feeling myself. Of course, you do understand that Charles Oliveira is an extremely dangerous opponent. And if Dariush goes down to the mat with him, he obviously could be subbed. And there's a variety of ways this fight could play out. But I feel more comfortable siding with Beneil Dariush. All right. Hopefully I wasn't ranting there too much. Just a little excited for that fight there. Beneil Dariush right now on DraftKings is a minus 140 favorite. If you would have locked this fight in, about a month ago on DraftKings, you could have got him at underdog odds at plus 105. That's where he opened up. On a lot of the other sports book, take a look if you guys can see this with me here. Check out Bovada, where Beneil Dariush opened as a minus 125. That's a much more realistic line opener that a lot of you guys probably saw. And, movement up and down, back and forth, but he's settling in as the favorite. I do expect him to be the favorite when this fight kicks off. And I think that, the line is close enough where you could feel comfortable with either man, and I think that the line is not ridiculous to go either way with either of these fighters. I like Beneil Dariush via finish. I say he finishes this fight, TKO type of victory. He'll probably finish this fight before the third round even kicks off, sometime in rounds 1 or 2. Whoa, what's going on over there? In the meantime, if any of you guys are looking to sign up to a new sports book, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I recommend you guys try out Bovada.lv. Let me send you guys my referral link before you sign up so I can give you guys a credit for the referral, so I get credit, and I will give you guys 2 packages for 2 events. Okay, we got a huge card like this. I really love my spots. This is the type of card you want to jump on. I'll give you another one in the future for whatever card you want to use it for. All right, reach out to me. I got my email scrolling below, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want to do. Any of those types of ways, reach out to me. Let me get you that link, and I'll answer any questions you have about how things work over there. But Bovada.lv is a great sports book. It's what I use. So we go from that huge lightweight clash, and then we jump into the main event. We got the championship on the line. I like this fight, as I said. I think this is a very fun fight. I'll be ready to go when this fight's kicking off. I'll be excited for this one. Amanda Nunes facing a legit threat in Irene Aldana. This girl can crack. I think that she's very deserving of this shot right now, just based on the knockout performances that she's put out there throughout the years. Coming off 2 knockout victories in a row, knocking out Macy Chiasson and Yana Santos. Lost a tough decision to Holly Holm before that. Knocked out Ketlin Vieira before that. She's had victories over Talita Bernardo. She's a fighter that has had a lot of success outside of the octagon, and a fighter that's on the verge of making her way back at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Victories over Lucy Padilova, Betch Cajera. She's had losses to Raquel Pennington and Holly Holm as of recently, and those are 2 true veterans of the game that do a lot of things well, and they were able to stifle her there. I think Amanda Nunes can definitely take a page out of their books. From those fights. I think that Amanda Nunes, if she plays this intelligently, this is a fight that she could definitely handle. I don't want to say with ease, but if she plays this fight intelligently, I think that Amanda Nunes could potentially cruise into a nice little W here. which is no surprise, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys feel similarly to that. I mean, Amanda Nunes, the GOAT of women's mixed martial arts at this point in time, after Shevchenko just lost. I mean, Amanda Nunes, in my book, is a legit GOAT. I know a lot of you guys have felt like that already for a while. But with her just recently getting finished by Pena, and I felt that Shevchenko won at least one of the 2 times they fought, if not both of them. So whatever, we won't go on about that. But Nunes is the GOAT right now. She's coming off a phenomenal performance where she went out there and got her redemption over Juliana Pena. We know that when she lost the first time, there were some rumors and words of her not being at 100%. And, we saw her not look the best in that fight. But when she's ready to go and she's fully prepared, I think that she is I don't want to say an unstoppable force, but I mean, she's right there. So Irene Aldana, she has that long frame. She'll still be at a half-inch reach disadvantage. Nunes still has a half-inch reach. Aldana an inch taller. This is a fight. I'll say this. This is a fight that is a lot more threatening to Amanda Nunes compared to almost any other fight out there right now. And I truly believe that. And that's just based on the fact that Irene Aldana can crack. And if Amanda Nunes makes one mistake within the first couple rounds of this fight, she can get knocked out. All right. Irene Aldana is a legit heavy hitter. Okay. Over in women's mixed martial arts. She starches girls. There is that type of realistic possibility. There's potential she could win a decision and in a grueling striking type of match. But if Nunes mixes things up, I think that she will stifle Aldana. And of course, I'm on Amanda Nunes here, as is pretty much everybody, right? I mean, comment below if you're taking Irene Aldana. You need to state that now. But I think this is a dangerous fight for Nunes, but I am on Amanda Nunes to get the job done here. I'm excited to see how it plays out. I'm excited to see those striking exchanges. But if Nunes is not up to par with her striking defense and she gets clipped with the big shot, don't be shocked. I won't be necessarily shocked. And you take a look at the betting line, and I think it's clear that people are in agreement because you do not typically see these types of betting lines next to her name. And she opened up on DraftKings as a -390 favorite and is now a -315. Okay, so action coming in on Irene Aldana. So people understanding that she is a major threat on the feet, and stylistically, she's a tough matchup for Nunes there. But I got to go at Nunes. If Nunes is smart, she plays it cerebral, patient. She plays it patiently from the outside, maybe mixes in some takedowns or whatnot. She needs to really just outclass Irene Aldana by mixing things up and keeping her unbalanced. It can't just be a straight up striking match where you're going tit for tat. I think you could play with some danger there. I want to see Nunes working the leg kicks heavily throughout this fight while covering up her head, and just being very defensively sound there. You see the double champ here. Irene Aldana landing about 1 strike per minute more so throughout her UFC career. But look at this. Amanda Nunes, much more defensively sound, only absorbing 2.75 strikes per minute, while Irene Aldana getting 5.71 strikes landed on her per minute, which is it's a high number. That's above average, and I think that's a dangerous factor for her there too. Nunes can hurt her bad, and Nunes is very live to get the knockout as well. So understand that this is a women's mixed martial arts fight that you can easily see a knockout in. I'm excited for it. I got Amanda Nunes to get the job done, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see a late finish, a late TKO. Maybe we see a lot of blood and we see a stoppage late on in this fight. So my pick obviously will be Amanda Nunes to get the job done, and she retains her championship title. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC 289. I'm excited for this card. Obviously, you guys can tell my energy throughout this video has been a little bit on the up. I'm excited. These 2 last cards have been a little bit of lackluster events, and I'm excited to have a big event like this taking place. And like I said, I feel solid about some of the spots throughout this card to make some money. So, but specifically the last 2 fights in the card, I'm excited to see how they play out. Hopefully you guys are excited for this card as well. I hope you guys have a great time watching the fights this upcoming weekend. I hope you guys have a great week leading up to the weekend. I hope you guys are ready for the summer. Hopefully you guys have a beach near you or some type of lake or something that you could kind of relax and unwind throughout the summer. If it's a little hot by you, you need to cool off. Hopefully you're not stuck in the concrete jungle out there, but even if you are, I'm sure there's something you could do to chill out throughout the summer. And I'll leave you guys with this little side note. For some of you guys that like to watch all that toxic stuff online, the murder videos, the brutal beatings of people, I would say to you, if you don't realize that stuff wears on you. I was somebody that always used to love to watch all that stuff, even I still was even watching some of that till recently, but I personally tried to cut watching all that stuff off. I unfollowed a lot of the Instagram pages I used to follow, and avoided some of these YouTube channels I used to watch where it's just all this drama and all this craziness that's going on in the world. I feel better when I do that type of stuff. I've felt better since I've done that. I think you guys will feel better too. Maybe some of you guys don't realize it. I didn't realize it throughout the years. I always used to watch all this stuff, and I think it kind of would put me in a bad mindset at times. It would make you kind of numb to certain things and make you kind of just that. I think being numb to violence and a lot of those types of things, man, and not understanding, you know, this, it's just not good to see those types of things on a regular basis. Maybe you want to take the time to unfollow some of those things you watch and try to avoid them and see if you feel a little bit better and a little bit more positive. You guys, I don't know, just a little food for thought out there. For me, it's worked good. I felt better. And even when it comes to politics and all that stuff too, man, all these news outlets, you watch all their stuff and it's just filled with drama. And you always see what's the bad stuff that's going on in the world. Focus on the good stuff that's going on out there. I promise you, you'll feel better. Life's short. Try to enjoy the good things going on in the world, and I think you'll feel better. All right, so I'll leave you guys with that. Have a beautiful week. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.